You think you're coming for a book reading? This is not a book reading. This is a launch party at Barnes & Noble. Thanks to Barnes & Noble for having us. It is me. It is, let's see if I point the right way. I totally didn't. It is Josh Mensch right here. My name is Brad Meltzer. We wrote this book, and Josh Mensch is joining us today. I have to point away from him. I'm like a weatherman right now. I point away from him, and I'm actually pointing away from the screen, but it's pointing at him. And we're here to talk about the Lincoln conspiracy. We have a couple major thank yous to do first. We want to welcome everyone. We are pretending we're in Union Square right now. We know Union Square, we obviously, it's like we love having all the people that fill Union Square, but we know that when we do it here on the Barnes & Noble Facebook page, there are 30 million people watching us. This is like the last smash of book signings. They've told me that. I'm choosing to believe it. So a couple of things that are really, really important. Huge thank yous to our hosts is Barnes & Noble. And I started my career in many, many bookstores, including Barnes & Noble. So a huge shout out to Joanne Coast, who is an amazing host and always hosts us, and we love her. I hope she's out there somewhere. If not, we just like telling her that. And the same thing for Sally Ann Leventhal, for Cecily Hensley. Amanda and Alex are behind the scenes here. These are people who really help us on a daily basis. And again, key thank yous, because we never get to do this. And I'm not doing this anywhere else, but I'm doing it here. But a huge thank you to Josh Mensch, my co-writer on this book. And I'm going to talk about him. He has an amazing wife, Mary. Mary, thank you for, I know you're not even watching now because she's taking care of kids. Josh is out in a cabin. He is like Unabomber styling this whole thing. You couldn't even find him if you tried. You'll see, you look in the picture, there's no identifying information behind him that could let you go there. Huge thank you to Jill Neera, my agent, Jennifer Rudolph Walsh, and Jay Mandel, who has picked up and run with this. That's the only reason this book has been sold. And I want to thank Walter Starr, who's been our researcher too. And really, most important, we get to our publishers watching. We think they're watching. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're all having dinner. But I want to thank some of the people at the publisher. I actually made a list like it's the Oscars now. But Don Weisberg from the start, and Christina Gilbert, and Aileen Boyle has been killing herself all week, and Marlena kills herself every week, Bittner, and Nancy, and Amy, and Catherine Turo has been, Jasmine Faustino, and Lauren Bittrich are so amazing, incredible editors. Lauren has picked up the ball and run with it. She's the reason. I will tell you that when we were researching and writing and finishing this book, we had some problems at one point with copy edit, and she literally was like, I'm going to do it. I don't care that I'm not supposed to. This is my job. She took it over. And Samantha Edelstein has done audio stuff for us. But I want to thank Bob Miller, most important, because he is the one who dreamed this dream with us right when we started. And so thank you, Bob, for making this happen. We'll hit a lot more people. But I'm going to tell you about the book, but I want to start with the dedication. I never get to do this anywhere. This book, and Josh can talk about who's his is dedicated to, because it's a really cute girl. Julie, you think I'm saying something crazy, but you'll see. This book is dedicated for Stephen Mitchell and Jay Katz. They are my cousins, but they saved my life when I needed them most. And I really, really love them, appreciate them. I'm going to, my wife and my family and everyone else, my kids, I love thanking, but my sister too. But this one's dedicated to them. So welcome to the very first event that we are doing. Barnes & Noble picks like one book. They can't do a lot of these, right? Usually there's hundreds of events around the country. They pick one book a day that they're going to feature. They featured us. We tricked them into it. We love them for it. Let us tell you a little bit about this one. Dun, dun, dun. The Lincoln conspiracy. And very, very quickly, we all know the story of John Wilkes Booth famously ending Abraham Lincoln's presidency. This is, of course, the story that takes place before that, at the start of his presidency. This is the first secret plot to kill Abraham Lincoln at the very start. And just to set it up, to be sworn in as the 16th president, to raise his right hand on the Capitol and swear that he's going to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, but in a presidential oath, Abraham Lincoln had to go and take a train from his hometown in Springfield, Illinois, had to go all the way to Washington, D.C. To get there, you got to go through Baltimore. And Maryland at the time was a slave state. So the plot to kill Abraham Lincoln was really simple. The secret society was planning that when he comes through Baltimore, they're going to kill him at the start of this presidency before any of it begins. And you'll see when you read the book, and I'm not going to try not to ruin much of it because I always love your questions. So think good questions, put good questions down there right now. One other thing before I even go forward more is we usually do a photo every time we do a photo of everyone in the audience holding up their book. So we're going to try and recreate that. So start uploading your photos. Hold your book up if you have it, or just put a picture of yourself. We do not care, but put it in the comments here, because we're going to eventually collect them all and share them. So that's going to be awesome. And you're going to be live on all this stuff. So, or it may not work. The technology may not work. Barnes & Noble doesn't know, but we're going to try. So upload your photo. But the fun of this book for Josh and I was just looking at this amazing story in itself. Right? You're on a speeding train in the middle of the night. And we can see there's 4 people on board among the many passengers. We're focused on just a couple of them. There's 2 businessmen that are there. There's a woman that's there, and she has an invalid brother. And I'll tell you real quick, is none of them are who they say they are. Not a single one of them. They're using fake names. Of the businessmen, one of them is a man named Allan Pinkerton. He runs the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and he's one of America's most famous private eyes. You'll see that Pinkerton himself, that's where we get the word private eye from. His big logo had a big giant eyeball on it, and that's where we get private eye from. So Allan Pinkerton's on this train. Kate Warren is also, she's the woman on the train. She is America's first female private detective, and she is an ass kicker. She is amazing. You will love her. She is my hero now. I know she's going to become yours. She is on this train. Her brother on this train is not her brother. He's certainly not an invalid. His name is Abraham Lincoln. They put a disguise on him. They give him a code name, which is an awesome code name. And they are all on this train, speeding in the middle of the night, trying to make sure they are avoiding the secret society that is plotting to kill Abraham Lincoln. And I just ruined, that's chapter 1 of the Lincoln Conspiracy. I just ruined it for you. I ruined it, but that's the way it goes. And what I also want to tell you about are some of my favorite scenes of the book. There's one moment that I love that Josh and I know we've been talking about, and that is the moment where they have to figure out, and they figure out that there's a plot to kill Abraham Lincoln, and they're going to go tell him. And they go to Abraham Lincoln's hotel room in the middle of the night, and they knock on the door, Allan Pinkerton does, and basically says to him, listen, there's a plot to kill you. They tells Abraham Lincoln, and he says, I know you're going to be in Philadelphia tomorrow. He tells Lincoln, you have a big event in Philadelphia. We want you to skip the event. We're going to save your life, and we're going to get you through Baltimore without anyone knowing. And Abraham Lincoln in that moment says, no, I'm not skipping my Philadelphia event. I'm like, why would you not skip that? And here's what Abraham Lincoln was actually scheduled to do the next day in Philadelphia. Is that next day in Philadelphia, he was there to honor the birthday of one of his heroes, a man named George Washington. And Abraham Lincoln did not want to miss that event. And sure enough, he goes to the event. And Josh and his keen research skills actually found the speech that Abraham Lincoln gives that day. And he says in there, he talks about unity for the country. And he says, and if not, you might as well assassinate me. That's what he says. And it's not some throwaway line. We actually know at that point, when you look at what he said, and when you look at Pinkerton's notes, that Abraham Lincoln knew there was a plot to kill him when he said those words. And the great part is right after that, that's when the Pinkertons whisk him away. I won't ruin that part. You'll see how they get him out of there. You'll see how they get him on the train. It's pretty amazing. And I love the fact that all of this takes place. It's all real, and it all really happened. And I think personally, for me, Josh and I, we had a couple plots that we were looking at when we started this book. And one of the reasons we picked this moment in time is we kept looking at it. And again, Josh and I, and he hit it first far before I did, is the idea that we weren't just telling the story of Abraham Lincoln. It's titillating, right? To say we got the plot to kill Abraham Lincoln, and it's amazing, and it's going to be great. And yeah, that's a great way to sell some books. But I think for us, it was about the bigger story, the context that this was all happening. And this is the beginning of not only Lincoln's presidency, but the unfolding of the Civil War. It's a time in America where America is basically fractured. It's split down the middle. And whatever side you're on, you hate the other side. You think whatever side you're on, the other side are complete horrible people. Does that sound familiar to you? That's exactly where we are right now as a culture. And what Abraham Lincoln does in that moment is he shows what great leadership is. And great leadership is not dividing us further. Great leadership is about bringing us together. That's what great leaders do. And that's what Abraham Lincoln does here. And I think personally, and then I'll turn it over to Josh, is for me, the great part of the book is that, I always say, and you've heard me say before, we make a huge mistake with our heroes. in this country. And what we do is we build these beautiful monuments to them, and then we go to the bottom of the monument, at the base of the monument, and we worship. And we do those heroes a huge disservice. Because what we do when we do that is we turn these people into these lowercase g gods. We make them bigger than life. And we do them a huge disservice. And you'll see here, if I woke you up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and I said, Abraham Lincoln, tell me about him, you would literally blurt out, you'd say, freed the slaves, log cabin, wears a big hat. We all know the cliches. The cliches are easy. What's far more interesting to me is to see not Abraham Lincoln at the end of his life, where everything's going great and he's celebrated and the Civil War is over and we won. But I love seeing Abraham Lincoln 1.0. I love seeing him at the start of this amazing presidency, right before he takes office, where there are still mistakes to be made and he's fretting. His physical appearance is changing because he's so worried. He's making mistakes. They lose the inauguration speech. They're so disorganized. His kid loses it. And that part is the best part. You know what Abraham Lincoln's doing when they tell him he wins the presidency? He's on the back of the building playing what amounts to handball. And before he leaves for the White House, before he leaves for Washington, D.C., one of the last things he does is he goes back home to see his father's grave and to say goodbye and see his stepmother, who's still alive, who helped raise him and he adores. You'll see the wonderful scene of him talking to his stepmother. But it's what the stepmother says is that she's worried that he's going to be assassinated while he's in office, that she's never going to see him again. And she's absolutely right. And what I love when you see all this, and you see how human Abraham Lincoln is at the beginning of all this, is you realize that all of us we are all scared and we are all amazing. We are all brave and we are all terrified, especially now where we are right now. Right? We're doing a book tour in the middle of a pandemic. You're watching from home what you used to be able to come and see us experience together. And I know that these moments can feel like the lowest moments, but it doesn't mean that we're flawed or horrible. It just means we're human. We're scared now, but we're brave now. We're wonderful now and we're terrified now. Some of us all within the same few minutes. Some of us in a passing of a couple of seconds. And to me, that's the big picture of the Lincoln conspiracy, is helping you see that. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Josh and let him say whatever he likes. If you don't know Josh, you should. I hope you've seen him on my social media. But without further ado, the only reason I saved this one for the end, the only reason this book exists, and it is so good, is thanks to my friend Josh Mensch. If you don't know where he's from, originally he was our executive producer on Lost History, and our best researcher, our best writer, and has become one of my dearest friends on this planet. I love working with him. And so take it away, my friend.
Wow. Well, thank you, Brad. I really appreciate that. And I won't speak for long. I also just want to say a few thank yous. First of all, to all the folks at Flatiron who worked so hard and helped us both complete this book and who are working so hard now. We're thrilled to be working with you. Bob Miller, Lauren Bittrich. Thank you also, Eileen Boyle, for all the hard work you're doing. Thank you to Walter Starr, who helped me so much understand parts of this story. And thanks to all the folks at Barnes & Noble for hosting this event, making the most out of a difficult situation. And I want to thank Brad personally. This is now our second book, and Brad's been such a great collaborator. We're wearing the same outfit tonight. It was not planned, but of course he's got the pocket square, so he kind of always has to one-up me a little bit. But we really try to have fun together, and we've made it through 2 books without killing each other, so that's really something. So thank you, Brad. I also want to thank my wife, Mary, and my children, Malcolm and Maxine. The dedication Brad mentioned at the very beginning was for my almost 1.5-year-old daughter, Maxine. That's who I dedicated the book to. She was really born just as we were beginning this project, so this book and Maxine have sort of grown up together. I have been quarantining with 2 children under 5. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's difficult. So for anyone else out there who's doing the same thing, I know how hard it is. And actually, with that in mind, we also do want to send our best wishes to anyone out there who's suffering because of what's going on, whether it's for health reasons or for economic reasons or any of the many, many ways this time period has been so difficult for so many people. So sending our best wishes, and who knows, maybe if reading our book can provide a little entertainment or make people interested in something and forget about what's going on now, that would be great. I won't say too much more beyond what Brad has already said. It was a real privilege for us to be able to study this time period in American history, to study Abraham Lincoln, and not just Lincoln himself, but the great people around him. Brad mentioned Allan Pinkerton, someone that maybe not everyone knows about, but who led a fascinating life, and his colleague, Kate Warren, who's a great character, very uncelebrated, but should be celebrated. Frederick Douglass is in our book a lot. Absolutely seminal, important, amazing character in American history. Getting just to read his writing was a great, profound experience for me, as it was learning more about Lincoln's life and about the time period. As Brad said, we think right now the country is divided. Well, go back to the 1850s, go back to 1860. The country was truly divided then. We're debating a lot of things now in the country. At the time, they were debating slavery. What could be more profound? What could be more of just a moral, epic moral debate and terrible, horrible institution to grapple with than slavery? So however heated things are now, they were more heated then. And Abraham Lincoln, of course, we all sort of revere Lincoln now. At the time, half the country could not stand him. And of all the struggles that new presidents have faced, Abraham Lincoln, between the time he won the election and the time he was inaugurated, 6 states seceded from the Union. And so he was about to take on already what would have been the hardest job in the world. And then on top of that, 6 states are seceding. So you can imagine the burden he was bearing on the day that he was inaugurated. And it just got worse from there. So studying this time period is so fascinating. We hope you find it as fascinating as we do. And what we try to do in these books is really try to bring the period to life and imagine what it would be like as a human being, as a person with thoughts and feelings, experiencing some of this, and try to get in the shoes of some of these characters that you read about in history class, and try to really bring those stories to life and make you think and feel the way they might be thinking and feeling. So it was so much fun to research and to write this book, and we really, really hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, we'd love to just open it up to questions and see what you have to say, and we'll try to answer the best we can.
You could ask about anything, right? You don't even, I mean, first of all, I love seeing where everyone's from. I see Dallas, Texas. I see Florida. I feel like, what's that thing? Is it like in New York when they used to have it was a romper room, right? He used to say at the end, I see Mary. I see Jamie from, I don't even know what ENC is. I see Callie. I see Mary. Your wife is here. Oh my gosh. Your wife is watching and your kids are watching, and now you're totally screwed. I'm watching all this. West Virginia's here. San Antonio's here. I see R. Keith. Arlene is here. Hello, Becky. This is awesome. Please upload photos so we can put everyone down. Okay, what was the spark for the first conspiracy? Here's the first question. And if you can put their names in there if you can, because we like to thank these people. So thank you, whoever asked that. When we started this, we actually had a couple different Lincoln plots. We knew after the first conspiracy, after we did George Washington, you can't help but try and play a little bit of historical, how do you top this? And it's tough to top George Washington. We knew we wanted to do Abraham Lincoln. I knew a story about Abraham Lincoln that was really cool and kind of unknown. Josh knew stories, and we had a bunch of them. I had, I think, first heard of this plot years ago, but truthfully didn't know much more than just the contours of the puzzle. I knew like the edges of the puzzle, but I did not have the picture of the middle. I just knew it happened tangentially. And full credit for where the spark came from is, as Josh, we literally were like, let's dive into both and see which one kind of has more meat on the bone. Because you can always find some crazy story. You can always find some that's like, did you know that on this day, something happened? There was a plot to, do this or that or the other thing. But if it's really like, it wasn't a real plot, or it wasn't an interesting plot, or it was over in 2 days, it's not really worth a book. And our question is always like, not just is it worth a book, but what does it have to say about where we are? And as Josh dove into them, I remember we got on the phone. I remember this call, Josh, and we kind of started talking about the bigger context. And at least for me, and I'd love to hear your response as well, I remember sitting on the phone and you saying, if we do this one, the pluses and minuses of each, we kind of made a plus and minus column, and I was writing them down and sketching the yays and nays of both. But it was when we started saying, we can write about the Civil War, and it hasn't happened, and it's happening. And personally, for me, what I thought the reason we should do this was it was where the culture was. I could feel it a year and a half ago. We were just totally divided as a culture, and we felt like, we can actually take this book. And I remember as we were going through drafts, and Josh always does that first draft, I remember always saying to him, keep in mind where we are as a culture. You don't have to put it on the page. You don't have to hit people over the head with it. But let's always know that this book is in a response to that. And you kind of feel it seep through the page. I really appreciate Donald Trump yesterday on Sunday to promote our book, purposely talking about Abraham Lincoln solely so we could sell more books. That was really kind of him, as he complained that, he had worse press than Abraham Lincoln, with, of course, not even, Abraham Lincoln's press was so horrible. He was hated so much. Abraham Lincoln was hated so much that in, I think, 10 different states, they didn't even put him on the ballot to vote for him, even though he won the nomination. They were just like, no, we're not even going to put his name on the ballot. So they were burning his, images of him in effigy. They were threatening him. The letters were coming in. You'll see the section of the book where all the death threats come. But for us, it was really where we are. It's right where we are right now, and trying to show people what a great leader can do, because my God, right now, we need heroes more than ever. Forget about where the culture is. Look at the pandemic. We need good heroes more than ever. And so for me, that's kind of was a huge spark. Josh, I don't know if you please add away.
Well, here's another question from Plymouth, Missouri.
Right, Jennifer.
What is the most surprising discovery about Lincoln that you learned? Well, partly is, what Brad said. We all think of Lincoln now as this kind of revered figure who, was so wise, and he wrote these beautiful speeches that we now study. But when he was elected, he was very inexperienced. He hadn't been in politics in a long, long time. He had served very little time in federal politics at all. People didn't really know who he was. People looked down on him because he wasn't well educated. He was incredibly smart and self-educated, but he didn't have the fancy connections. He didn't come from money. He grew up very poor, as we know. And so he really had to earn the respect of everyone around him. And there was an enormous amount of self-doubt, both with him and other people's doubting him. So many people thought, this guy from the sticks just does not have the leadership qualities, does not have the experience, didn't go to the fancy schools, and will not be capable of rising to this occasion. And that self-doubt, he had real dark moments of the soul. We tell this about this moment in the story right after he right after he was elected president, and he goes home at night all by himself, and he looks in a mirror, and he has a kind of a premonition of his own death. But coupled with that, he's just filled with enormous self-doubt. He feels like, I can't possibly bear the responsibility that is being thrust on me. And so many people doubted me, and I doubted myself. And the true burden of it was almost crippling. And this was on the night he was elected president. So that kind of self-doubt and that uncertainty and that sense of having to kind of dig deep and rise to the occasion, that insecurity was something that was really fascinating to read about. And he had bouts of depression and self-doubt that were really very profound. So I would say that's the thing that surprised me most.
Yeah, for me, and listen, we always tend to have the same opinion of these things. I'll give you one. And before I give you this answer, I got to tell you just a couple. Drew Van Huss, a high school history teacher's here. I got to call some people out. John Park, who made me a colonel, man, I owe you forever for that. And I see there's just a lot of really amazing people. Jim Day is hosting our fan group here. So thank you to every person. I'm seeing you. By the way, my wife is writing saying hello, even though she's downstairs from me right now. So I got to say hi to her. And your wife, by the way, Josh, by the way, Barnes & Noble told us, don't read the other public comments, just read the comments we feed you. So of course, I'm not listening to them. What are you, crazy? I'm totally reading the comments you guys are writing. And they're me. I love you. I see Ann Arbor here. I see every person here. Your son is saying, say hello again, Josh. If you don't say hi right now, your son is going to have a fit.
Malcolm, hello, buddy. I love you, kid. I'm so
That's
glad
right.
You're watching.
This is parenting, by the way, in the 21st century. We are ignoring our children just to entertain all of you today. But I'll tell you also, what surprised me about it? And it blew me away, is Abraham Lincoln's voice was nasally. That's how it was described in all these different accounts. Is whenever you see anyone play Abraham Lincoln in a movie, they've got that Daniel Day-Lewis, and he's got this amazing, like weird, amazing accent. But Abraham Lincoln was called ugly by everyone, gawky, gangly. They called him every horrible name. And he gets up this, 6'4". Most people never saw a 6'4" person in their life, much less the one that looked like him. And here comes Abraham Lincoln and gets in front of, even in the Lincoln Douglas debates, as you'll see them in the book, gets in front of everyone. And Douglas is like this kind of just pit bull and pawing the ground and kicking up dirt. And he's like this little giant monster who's like, a head shorter than Abraham Lincoln. And Lincoln gets up there, awkward and gawky, nasally voice. Probably someone you would make fun of. And certainly people did. But when the guy starts speaking, everyone starts listening. And God, do I love that. That just shocked me that like the greatest voice, arguably, of our time is one that rises above all the other things we would usually kind of kick it down for. Okay, Joyce says, we are so stinking good. I think that's a perfect question. Okay, I'll do this one. Ida says, oh, hey, Ida. How long do you spend doing research? So this is a good question. When you write fiction, you can make up whatever you want. This book has something like 50 pages of footnotes, and full credit to Josh. He leaves no stone unturned. So Josh, I'll let you talk. You should really answer this, because the research starts and then it continues going as we go and as we go.
Well, it sort of depends on where you count the starting of the research, and it started gradually and then kind of ramped up. At the end of the day, we're looking at two solid years, but the fact is it could have been 10 years, because once you get into it, you feel like you can just keep going. There's so much to learn. Luckily, when it comes to the Civil War era, there are a lot of sources, more so than, we wrote another book about the Revolutionary War, and there just aren't that many remaining documents. But in the 1860s, records were preserved. And so you can just dive in and just get lost in the world of the time period. You can get lost in the characters. And so again, I'll say 2 solid years, but at the end of it, you still feel like I want to do more and I just want to keep going, because you feel like there's always more to learn. But I have to say the researching and just learning is one of the most fun parts of the whole process, for sure.
Okay, here comes Joshua Bryant. Says, Lincoln as a lawyer, what was the most interesting case that he did that surprised you both? We don't get into many of the cases, but the thing that we do get into is one of his last moments is when he goes back and sees his law partner Herndon, and he goes back to the office, right? The guy's won the presidency. He's getting ready to leave and say goodbye. And he goes back kind of to the old workplace. Imagine you won the presidency and then you got to kind of go into work and say goodbye to everyone. But his office is just one guy. It's just his law partner. And, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, yeah, one day I'm going to come back here as if we're going to try some more cases. And Herndon knows, you're never coming back here. And what strikes me in that moment is it's right as, and Josh just talked about, is Lincoln has this dream, this premonition that he's going to die in office. And he says he's going to die in his first term. He's totally wrong about the date, but he's absolutely right about the end result. And I love that scene with Herndon. I love that scene in the law office.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add to this is we don't cover his career as a lawyer in the book, but one sort of interesting fact that we learned is that Lincoln was entirely self-taught as a lawyer. He was self-taught. His entire education was self-taught. He taught himself to read and write, and he taught himself math as a child. But then as a young man, he didn't have a penny in his pocket, and he decided that he was interested in the law. And so he learned to be a lawyer just by borrowing law books and by talking to people who were practicing. And he would stay up all night reading these borrowed law books. And just by sheer will and determination, he was able to educate himself to eventually become one of the most respected lawyers in the state of Illinois. So mighty impressive.
Yeah, I see Luke Wyckoff out there from Colorado. You know what I also see, and it's very important, is someone said this, is they said, if you buy your books at Barnes & Noble, that they will come out to your car and give them to you. And I don't know what you should find your local Barnes & Noble, but it is important to know that you can, we hope you're supporting your Barnes & Noble right now. They are obviously supporting us. We want to make sure you know not only are you watching this, but you can order from them. And not just for our benefit, but for theirs. There are a lot of stores right now. I know there are a number who actually are open, but not that many. But you can still order. You can still get the book. And thank you for doing that. Whoever wrote that, I really appreciate that.
I'm just now seeing a question.
Marty Davis wrote that. Yeah.
I'm just seeing a question now. How many volumes would the Trump conspiracy need? And I will just say that will definitely be a multi-volume set.
Right. I mean, the thing that's great is, by the way, Barnes & Noble totally said, don't read the comments. And now all we're doing is like, we want to read our own comments. Okay. Stephanie asked, how do you each go about your research for the novel? So obviously this is not a novel. This is a nonfiction book. But our research, and Josh, you should talk about yours. Why don't you go with yours first and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, and we talked about the research a bit earlier, so I won't say too much more about it, other than, there's great libraries out there. Remember that time when you could actually go to a physical library? Feels like a long time ago. But during our period of research, I spent a good amount of time in the New York City library system, also the Library of Congress and historical societies. But an enormous amount of material is, of course, available online now. So really, you can do some incredible, quote unquote, amateur research and gain access to all of the most of the critical documents you need. So now is a great time for people just to become their own researchers and learn a subject in depth. And you can do 90% of it just using your laptop.
And I see Ms. Knight is watching, so I appreciate that too. She's always looking out for us. Let me say, should we do one more question? How are we doing on time? Barnes & Noble people. Okay, Bill Tipper says, what kind of advice do you give your readers, many of whom are aspiring writers? I appreciate that question, Bill. So I got at the start of my career 24 rejection letters. There were only 20 publishers. I got 24 rejection letters, which means some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point. And the advice I would give to readers, and again, many writers, I don't look back on the experience and say, well, I was right and they were wrong and ha-ha on them. The advice I'd give is don't let anyone tell you no. Don't let anyone tell you no. I can tell you that, and this is my secret, is that years ago when I got my 23rd and 24th rejection letter, I actually thought they were supposed to be acceptance letters. The 23rd and 24th person, the 22 rejections came first, 23 and 24 liked the book. They had me actually come to their offices and meet with them. And I thought, this is going to be great. They're going to buy the book. And my agent, Jill Niemer at the time, said, stay by your phone. I'm going to call you up. I'm going to tell you how much they bought it for. And we're going to get you out of debt, because I was in so much debt from college and debt from law school at the time. And it was back when there were no cell phones. I waited by the phone rang, and I picked it up, waiting for her to tell me how wealthy I was going to be. And I remember picking up the phone. She said, sorry, kiddo. And my heart sank. And I'll tell you this, Bill, is that every day before I sit down to write, I recreate that moment in my head. I recreate the kind of phone I was holding. It was one of those plastic see-through ones where you could see the wires inside, because that seemed like high tech at the time. I recreate and picture the Formica desk on my left, the bed that's on my right. It had no headboard. It was a box spring and mattress. That's all we had. I picture the balcony I'm looking over, the parking lot that's right there. There's a fire station with 3 doors, and I count the 3 doors, 1, 2, 3, and I say, it's sorry, kiddo. And for 20 plus years now, every single time I sit down to write, I say those words again, sorry, kiddo, sorry, kiddo, sorry, kiddo, because I never, ever want to think I made it. I never want to think that I'm done. I never, ever want to lose the hunger that I had when I was 24 years old. And I never want to not appreciate this life that I am blessed to have. So for 20 plus years, that's my advice. Sorry, kiddo, sorry, kiddo, sorry, kiddo. Take your worst moments and turn them into your strengths. And to me, that's like the best thing I can give you. I miss BNN too, David. I see that right on there. Okay. Hung says, what do you each think books are just, why do you think that books are just what we need during this challenging time in quarantine? Are you kidding? That is exactly right. And I'll say that, Josh, you want to answer it first? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, well, that's kind of the only thing we can do right now. So.
That's where you are, especially.
Yeah.
But you know why? We need stories. Stories are powerful. There's nothing more powerful in the whole world than an idea. And all the story is a bunch of ideas. And that's why we need them. We need heroes more than ever right now. We need stories more than ever right now. Sorry, Josh, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to make that comment, but I'll just second what Brad said. quarantine or not, reading is such a great way to think about the world in a new way, to take you to a different place, to make you re-examine things. And during a quarantine, when everyone is suffering and there's a lot of uncertainty and confusion, I think especially maybe studying the past and reading stories about the past can help us kind of get through the present. And I feel privileged to have been able to write this book and to share it, and more so now than ever. And now I keep reading these comments, and I said Missouri when I meant Michigan at one of our first questions.
By the way, you know what's so good? What's so good about the internet is that if you make a mistake, it will immediately be corrected. So no matter what we say, I could say, Abraham Lincoln, his middle name was Albert, sure was. And immediately you guys will write what his middle name is. And you all know it's Scott. No, that's my middle name. Okay, so let's see. We'll do one more question and then we're going to call this a night. Do you animate the show? I assume that's an Xavier Riddle question. Let's do two more questions. Let's do one. You know what I'm going to show you? I brought you actually something special tonight. Because I was like, anyone who sticks around this long, what book fortified me as a writer? I'm going to show you actually which it is. So thank you, Diana. You guys want to see the next kids books that we do? For those who don't know, we do kids books. I wanted to give my kids better heroes to look up to. So wanted to give them heroes of kindness and generosity and perseverance. We started a whole book series. You'll see there's George Washington, there's Jackie Robinson. We did Leonardo da Vinci and Jim Henson and Rosa Parks and Jane Goodall. You'll see everyone. So I brought you first look. This is the next one. We're doing I Am Benjamin Franklin, and I just got the proof copies. No one's seen these yet. And maybe our most important book we're doing, I Am Anne Frank, which again, I feel like we need right now. But I want you to have something for sticking around this long. And this is it. I'm going to show you. This is the first look. No one has seen this. No one has seen it. If my publisher says I showed you this, don't tell them I didn't. This is I Am Benjamin Franklin. This is Chris Eliopoulos on the art. He is the amazing, amazing artist who does these books with me. We love him. But I wanted you guys to get a look at the book first before anyone. You could see when you get a proof copy, it's not bound in. It all comes out. But you get to see some of the amazing artwork that he did. And this comes out in October. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Let's do one last question and we're going to wrap up, call it a night. And again, put your picture, please. But even if you're just a picture of you, put your picture, take a picture, a selfie, and upload it here because I'm going to go on this thing and I'm going to pull them all off. I'm going to show every single person who was here. We got one last question, or do we get off easy? Let's see. Oh, powerful people from Barnes & Noble, what will you give us? What age range for the kids' books? So there are baby books that are out there. We get people who buy them for kids who are just born. But our sweet spot is basically like 4 to 5 years old to about 10 years old, 12 years old, somewhere in there. We need more books. We need that Anne Frank book. I agree. Okay, last question. I'm gonna scroll up and find the last question. Wow. Thank you to Barnes & Noble. Yes, thank you to Barnes & Noble. Let's see. I'm gonna find one question. Let's see. Fiction and true stories equal satisfaction. I agree. Oh, here we go. Can you each share a few recent book recommendations? Oh, that's a good last. This is a good way. Barnes & Noble's smart right there, right? They're gonna sell you more books. This is good. Josh, you want to take it away?
Well, I'll actually mention a few of the books that I read in the course of learning about this period. I don't know if folks out there read lots of nonfiction history, but the classic about the Civil War is James McPherson, The Battle Cry of Freedom. There have been a million books written about the Civil War. This one was written several decades ago, but it still stands up. It's a great one-volume introduction. Also read recently the biography of Frederick Douglass, great American that everyone should learn more about. And there's almost too many biographies of Lincoln that I could recommend. But I will mention one more book by Eric Foner called The Fiery Trial, which is a real examination of Abraham Lincoln and slavery and his changing ideas about slavery throughout his life and throughout his career, culminating in, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation. I recommend all three of those, and then I'll toss it to Brad.
So what am I reading? I just read, well, I finished a little while ago. Station 11 caught me off guard. It was a book my wife gave me. It's perfect time. It's actually like a complete pandemic book and kind of like apocalypse book. My wife gave it to me. It's the only book I think I've ever read where someone said, read this. I'm not telling you what it's about, but just read it. But Station 11 blew me away. I'm reading Black Hammer right now by Jeff Lemire. It somehow missed me, and I came around back to that. I've been reading a lot of, I just finished Anne Frank's diary. Obviously, we're doing that. And the next hero in the kids' book, I would tell you, but it would ruin it. I've been just pouring through, it's a female figure as the next hero. I've been pouring through her biographies. And what else have I read that I loved? I'm trying to think what else is reading right now. I'll think of it the moment I stop trying to think of it. So I'm going to stop trying to think of it. With that said, thank you for sticking around and supporting us. Thank you for joining us tonight. And please, please, please keep supporting this great bookstore, Barnes & Noble. Please keep supporting. I know it's easy to just click. You can download from Barnes & Noble. Those of you who have Nooks, you can just hit the button and download. I know people have been writing that there. And I really, on behalf of Josh and myself and everyone at Flatiron, thank you for supporting this story. Mother's Day and Father's Day is coming. Hint, hint, right? It's a perfect gift. Get it for them. Order it now. I got your Father's Day covered. I got your Mother's Day covered when they deliver. But thank you for letting us do this and letting us have this writer's life. On behalf of Josh and myself, we are sending you love and signing off. Thank you to Barnes & Noble. We love you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.